we will talk about All-Star Weekend. This NBA All-Star hoodie was just a coincidence. It's cold out here in Boston, so that's why I got it on. But mixed reviews, a lot of people all over the place, a lot of people detracting what happened. Kevin Durant going on Twitter saying it's fun to complain about All-Star Weekend. Kyle, you watched it. You said we were going to be locked in like we always are. I know I mentioned last week that I was out there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But from your perspective, how was it? How was the presentation? What did it look like through TV to you? Are you as out on what happened this weekend as a lot of people seem to be?
The Rising Stars game, challenge, tournament, whatever you want to call it, on Friday was pretty competitive. I tuned into it for as long as I could before I had to go to a Valentine's Day dinner because I don't think I was going to, be able to move that one off the calendar to watch the championship of the Rising Stars game.
Bryce McGowan's couldn't get you out of it.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think that one was going to work. But, the All-Star Saturday night stuff, like dunk contest, obviously it needs bigger names. It needs some more juice. Mac McClung still brought it. I thought Stephon Castle still did his thing.
He did.
I was entertained by the three-point contest. Not so much with the skills challenge, although I actually did kind of appreciate what Wemby and Chris Paul tried to pull off. Like, I appreciated CP3 leaning into, like, that side of his personality where he's like, hey, we found a loophole. Let's make this work. And they ended up getting DQ'd. But for people that weren't going out of their way to watch the slam dunk contest, I totally understand why, because even though these young guys are super athletic, like they're not names that are going to draw you to a TV on a Saturday night. So, I watch it because it's at a convenient time on the West Coast, but for people that would have to go out of their way on the East Coast at 10 p.m., whatever time, like it doesn't really wrap up till 11. I totally get that. And then I got to be honest, Sunday, I was so disappointed, man. Like the actual product on the floor was good, but they just did so much other stuff. And I understand they're like, it's the last All-Star weekend with TNT and they like wanted to show a little bit of love. I have no idea who thought it was a good idea to like bring Kevin Hart in there and have him do like, full on like stand up segments in between game, like in the middle, not even in between games, in the middle of games.
Yeah.
Like,
during the game.
It's just, so it was really just a brutal product on the television. I'm curious to swing it back to you and hear your thoughts on how it felt in the arena, but like on TV, it was very much like, all right, like let's get back. Like the basketball on the court was pretty good and competitive. Like let's just get back to that. This is what it's supposed to be about. And instead, we ended up with a little bit of all-star basketball sprinkled in between a Kevin Hart stand-up show.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Bryce McGowan, by the way. It wasn't even a shot. He had a big jumper to lead Team G League to an upset win to start off the Rising Stars Challenge. Loved watching him play in Charlotte. So not a slight at all. That being said, there was some good basketball played. I echo that sentiment with you on Friday. The G League guys, big credit to them. They're the ones who kind of upped the intensity, and everybody else, they brought that level of play up. Energy was kind of low, and you've been to All-Star Weekend before. It felt the same, like, it kind of rises up. Friday, people are just getting settled. A lot of people are tired, especially those who make cross-country flights. They might not even make it out to Rising Stars. Saturday night, I think the biggest thing I'll talk about real quick, it just showed us that I think it was just as much Victor Wembanyama's idea as it was Chris Paul's, and it shows that those two dudes are cut from the same cloth, which is a scary thought to think that, Chris Paul is known as being one of the most competitive sickos we've ever seen, to know that Wembanyama is also that same type of guy and was all for it and was down to do it. There's some people who are upset about it, but listen, if there's a loophole that hasn't been closed, make them close it. I get it. It's whatever. For those of you who didn't see, they just tried to cut the corner with having to shoot jumpers as part of the skills challenge, which again, like you said, they broke the format again. They went from teams of 3 to just 2 relay races instead of, I don't know, whatever. Mac McClung saved Saturday night, in my opinion. The 3-point contest, Buddy Hield's heater that he went on was kind of the biggest thing that happened as far as that went. Tyler Hero, your pick was right. So shout out to you. Pat yourself on the back for that one. You had that pick correct with who would win the 3-point contest. There you go. I actually had my boy Troy, who I stayed with in San Francisco. When I came back, he said, yeah, your boy Kyle was on it. So he watches us on YouTube and gave you your credit for being right with your pick on the 3-point contest. But Stephon Castle and Matt McClung were awesome in the dunk contest. I think the cool thing about it is we're going to look back in 5 years, and Stephon Castle is going to be a big star, potentially playing on Sunday, and people will be like, man, remember when he did the dunk contest and was just a perfect score or 2 away from winning? Because any other year that wasn't involving Matt McClung, what Stephon Castle did would have won the dunk contest. But to see a car come out on the floor, to see him clear the car, it was real. Like he clipped it a little bit with his foot, which made it even cooler in the moment, and seeing it in the arena. I think that was honestly the highest level the energy was all weekend. You know, and Mac McClung, a showman. I mean, jumping over Evan Mobley, who was standing on a platform and then tapping the rim and then dunking it. Again, you talk about sickos, like it's a dunk contest sicko, if that exists. And like telling people to go review it, getting it on the first try, that was super awesome. And that was the high. And I was let down. I was also let down on Sunday. I was disappointed, quite frankly. Like you said, the basketball was they were working towards doing something. I think competitive wise, as far as you know, Wemby was playing hard. You saw some other guys playing hard, but he was really the one that was setting the tone. And the Kevin Hart stuff was weird. In the arena, we could also hear what was being broadcast on TNT at certain times, and that was strange to hear the play-by-play commentary or the comedian commentary. Shea wasn't feeling it, which was like, you know, if the players aren't playing into it, it feels like that kind of is where everybody is. The weirdest thing for me, though, was I don't know if you could hear this through the broadcast at all, but the PA announcer, who does a pretty good job with the Nuggets, from my understanding, he started doing the Bobito Garcia NBA Street thing where he is like doing play-by-play every play during the game. He's like calling Shea Gilgeous-Alexander Club Shay Shay. He's calling Trae Young Ice Ice, which is what my little cousin calls my aunt slash grandma, her grandma. Like, I'm like, this is just kind of, this is getting weird now, right? Like,
That
he's like, hey,
the broadcast. I didn't hear any of that.
He's going, hey, Club Shay Shay, take him to Club Shay Shay. What you got? What you got for? And we're just all, and I was like, I don't, and this is not, granted, disclaimer, my first All-Star since 2020. I don't know if that's something that has been brought along in the last 4 or 5 years that they haven't been doing, but it was cringe, honestly. And me even saying the word cringe is cringe, but that part was a little cringe. And it all comes down, like you said, it all leads up to that. I think 28 minutes they took to honor the Inside the NBA guys, and to see Charles show emotion was cool, and for it to happen while the other guys were on the court, even though you saw Jaylen Brown saying get him out of here, I don't know if that was out of context or not. It was funny regardless if it was out of context or not. But it just threw everything off because it happened essentially at the end of the first quarter, right? A team hit the 10-point mark in a game to 40, timeout, and then they just stopped playing for, 25, 30 minutes. You got Wemby started stretching on the sideline. Guys were kind of running laps, trying to stay loose. And I think from there, it just took the luster or anything that probably would have happened. I have a video on my phone of Jason Tatum's game-winning dunk to end it. And it was just like, like it wasn't like I think back to you and I going to All-Star in 2020 in Chicago. And even though Anthony Davis made a game-winning free throw to hit the Elam ending, it still was like a lot of excitement. I remember us being in the press room and everybody was huddled around the TV. And then meanwhile, Adrian Wojnarowski sent off a Woj bomb. I think it was about John Beeline, like 20 feet away from everybody. But the level of excitement and energy that was there from the media, from the fans, was not present, honestly, there. And I don't want to go out and say, hey, this is broken, or I'm not going to watch it next year, or I don't love the NBA, because I do. It just was one of those things where it was missing some things, not just something. And I don't know exactly how to put those pieces back together.
I mean, maybe the NBA does learn a little something from what the NHL's got going on right now with this Four Nations tournament. It's like, even again, like watching like Court of Gold, it's like, you're not going to be able to field full national teams to do an in-season tournament per se like that. But like, you could easily split it up into like 2 world teams, 2 US teams, and then kind of like have them go head to head that way. Maybe it's like US All-Stars versus US Rising Stars versus World All-Stars versus World Rising Stars, or something like that. And like, you could even group them by like, their region. Like, there's got to be a way to do something where the only thing that I will say that like bothered me about the tournament aspect that I didn't really think of when like, I first was like, oh, I'm really excited to see these guys compete in a tournament style play, is also that like, and someone made this point online, like, it's like, guys like Alperen Sengun, Tyler Harrow, like Jalen Williams, like first time All-Stars, like they worked their whole career to get to this moment. They never even played on the same floor as LeBron, Steph, and KD. They never even played on the floor with half the other guys who are All-Stars, and they were eliminated by the time, like before, like even all the showman. Well, I mean, the showman stuff started before the first game even, but like even before all that other stuff happened, those guys are already like, changed and going out to wherever the All-Star party is. Like their night was already over. So it's like, I think that it really cut it just cut everything. It cut everything that had to do with basketball shorter, and like
Yeah.
that is just so far away from like I think about the Adam Silver press conference before the All-Star game in Indy, where they were like, "We're going to go back to East versus West. We're back to like one of the birthplaces of basketball. We want to get back to basketball." And like this was anything but that. And again, for two guys who like listen, nothing that they do at All-Star Weekend is ever going to deter me from tuning in again next year and the year after that and the year after that. But like at some point, like this is the first time that I ever truly walked away and was like, I can't even spin that in a positive light. That was not an entertaining product. And that's just how it felt, watching it through a TV. And it sounds like you got the same vibe in the arena.
Yeah, and one last point on what you said about the first time All-Stars. They were barely out there, right? Like in a normal 48-minute game, these guys are going to at least play 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes, where in the game to 40, for whatever reason, it was untimed, but the box score does have how much playing time these guys got. Some of these guys played 7, 8 minutes, right? And it's just like, man, your first All-Star experience is just kind of a weird one. Granted, it's still an All-Star mark, and it still, goes on the tally for them and their careers, but the experience, I think, just doesn't equate to what it would have been in a traditional All-Star game. And the one last point, I saw somebody was pointing out that changes, the game has changed stylistically, right? Whereas like in the past, guys weren't shooting as many threes. So that can kind of make it look like guys are loafing a little bit because there's more 3-point shooting. But there's a nostalgia element too, right? Where we were kids when the All-Star game was in its heyday. And I think access is a big part of it too. Whereas, and this is shout out to Dragonfly Jones on Twitter because he used this exact example. But if you're a kid growing up in Virginia back in the 90s, you don't see Gary Payton play but 2 or 3 times a year. It doesn't matter where you live in the world now. If you're a big Shea Gilgeous-Alexander fan, if you're a big Jalen Williams fan, if you're a big Alperen Sengun fan, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, whoever it is, there's so much access, and that's the beauty of the game being global now. But I think All-Star Weekend isn't necessarily the showcase where fans are like, this is my one chance or one of 3 chances I have to watch my favorite player or watch these guys play. And I think that's just kind of the biggest thing and why people aren't as gravitated towards it, or like it doesn't feel like a necessity to be locked into it like it was in the years past. Now, that being said, viewership records in Canada, shout out to Shea. He debuted his new shoe. Looks pretty slick. And we got Zach Edey on the All-Star stage as a rising star. So well represented. Leonard Miller also showed out with the Team G League. I actually got a chance to talk to him a little bit during All-Star Weekend as well. And he had great things to say about the future of basketball in Canada. So big shout out to him and those 3 guys. And Grady Dick also played well during the Rising Stars Challenge as well. So it wasn't all bad, but ultimately we just left the need for the desire to have seen more.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to go back to the point that you made about like the access that you have to watching these players all the time through highlights on your phone, everything like that. Like I grew up as a kid in Boston, Mass, who my favorite player was Rajon Rondo, but like Steve Nash was who I would always say like my favorite non-Celtic of all time, Steve Nash.
Yep.
And like I would go out if the Suns were playing on national TV, I'm going out of my way to like, I'm asking for permission to stay up later to watch the Suns game, like watch Steve Nash play anytime I get, like, I didn't have a league pass growing up. Like it wasn't as common as it is nowadays even. So like, the only time I ever got to see Steve Nash play was when he was on national TV and I stayed awake to watch it, or All-Star Weekend where he was always there playing and and that's part of the reason why the skills challenge growing up was like one of my favorites, because Steve Nash always did the skills challenge. He did the 3-point contest a couple times. He was always on, on Sunday night in the All-Star game.
He helped Amari out in the dunk contest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He did that too. And like, it's like, for me, like that was my chance to be like, oh, all right, this is another opportunity to watch Steve Nash play. But like, if that's today's day and age, like you said, like I can look up, Steve Nash highlights on YouTube or the NBA.com or like whatever it is, anywhere you can find highlights anywhere you want. So like, I think that's a great point that I didn't really think of, but I do think that plays a big role into why like the weekend has lost its luster a little bit.
Yeah. One last point I'm gonna hit home before we go to a break and talk about some of the current news in the NBA. When I talk about Steve Nash, you think about Steve Nash, back-to-back MVPs, right? I think 05, 06, Dirk won in 07. So, 05, 06 wins back-to-back MVPs. And that is before YouTube was really a thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, think about the timing of it. And that's not to say that we're like super old, but I remember starting to watch YouTube highlights in 06, like 07 on, like it became more prevalent. And now game is, you can watch a condensed game. You can watch a condensed game on your phone, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever it is. You can get everything that you want for every play, and you can tailor it to your liking with the players you want to see, and don't see the players you don't want to see. So it is just interesting to think how it is, but I do think it would help maybe to go back to a traditional game. And it would be interesting to see guys wear their own uniforms. I don't think they'd ever do it. That would be one less uniform that could be sold. But I do kind of miss it. And now that baseball has switched to all-star uniforms, I don't know if they switched back or they plan on switching back. I don't think we can count on any other league switching back to all-star uniforms.
I want to say baseball switched back last year, actually.
Did they?
might
Did
have
they?
I'm like blanking on it now, but I'm almost positive they went back to just like everybody wears their own jersey. So maybe workaround there is like you sell like, whatever it is, the LeBron James Lakers jersey with like an all-star patch on it or something like that. Maybe every all-star weekend gets its own logo and you throw a patch on it. And it's a way to still get somebody to purchase a jersey. But yeah, like you said, that's less money in the NBA's pocket. So I don't really think that's a high priority for them fixing all-star weekend.
Yeah, but NBA, if you're listening, we got ideas. So just hit us up, tune in to NBA Sound System.